Hey everybody, it's Flyin Ryan here, and today I'm super excited to be reviewing the Hogs Star Wars speeder bike. Now, if you are anywhere near the Star Wars fan that I am, you are probably a huge fan of the speeder bike. Definitely one of the most iconic vehicles in the movie, and just so cool to be able to have a quadcopter version of it now. These have been pretty popular custom builds. There's been a few people that have made these on their own and have gone viral with them. But this is the first actual ready to fly. You know, you can buy it and be ready to go. You don't have to build it yourself. And this is, toy grade, so you're going to find this in Toys R Us and Walmart and stuff like that. So super easy to get. And it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to it. There's only one rate. We'll go ahead and get into the transmitter. So you just have your standard controls. You got your throttle on the left with left and right yaw to turn left and right, and then the right stick is all your pitch forward and backward and roll left and right. And then you have down here, this is what they call height lock. So if you flip this switch over to the lock position, now when you can just give full throttle and the speeder bike is going to hold its height. And then you can adjust that height with these arrows. You can make it go higher or lower by pressing those arrows. But that'll keep it, it'll kind of start out a few feet off the ground, so it kind of looks realistic, and it'll hold that height. So you don't have to manage the throttle. You can just leave the throttle pegged, and it should, for the most part, hold its height. Now that doesn't work overly well. It uses an ultrasonic sensor. Here, I can actually show you. You can see these little like speaker things here. So it's sending sound waves down to the ground and then bouncing back and receiving them, and that's how it keeps its height. So it works best over a hard surface. If you're over grass or a carpet or something like that, those sounds get absorbed a little bit and they deflect, and so it doesn't work as well. But if you're over like a tile or concrete, like I flew my flight review over a parking lot, and that works pretty well. It's still not super precise, and sometimes it will kind of bounce off the ground, but for the most part it will hold its height. And then you've got here on the right bumper, they call it the jump button. I don't think it's on the box anywhere or anything, but if you hit that while in height hold, it basically just gives it a little more height for a second. So it looks like it kind of jumps over something and then continues on. But otherwise, that's all there is to it. This left button doesn't do anything, and these are just your trim buttons. There are no rates, so you just have one control rate. You do have a little charging cable built into the right grip there, and it does have the USB pass-through, and it actually does come with the USB cable as well. So you're still going to go ahead and you plug this cable into the speeder bike in the bottom here, and then you can either charge off the batteries if you're like out on the go somewhere, or if you plug in that USB cable, now it's going to go and pass through the transmitter to your USB power source and not use the batteries inside the transmitter. So that's a good way to save your batteries if you're at home and have access to USB. Let's see, it has a 450 milliamp hour internal LiPo battery. That takes about an hour and 10 minutes to charge, and I found that it takes the same amount of time whether you're on USB power or the transmitter batteries. So you're going to look at about an hour and 10 minutes no matter how you charge it. And that gives you about a 6-minute long flight time. There's no LVC warning for this because there's no LEDs on it or anything, so there's no way to like indicate that the battery is about to die. So you'll just kind of notice it starting to lose power as it gets close to the end of the battery life. Let's see. One thing I thought was interesting is it doesn't really have any actual like landing feet. Like the motor pods don't extend down or anything, and so it sits a little bit diagonal. It doesn't. There's like a part that I think this thing here leans down more than everything else, so it doesn't sit level, and it doesn't have like a nice clean landing surface, which I thought was a little bit strange, especially when you're flying and you kind of bounce off the ground. You can see here I don't know if that shows up on camera too well, but these little feet pad things here are starting to get scraped up from bouncing off the ground. Looks like this is pretty scraped up as well. So I would have liked to seen some, I don't know, maybe on the motor pods or something, something else to land on the ground instead of it actually being, you know, his feet and stuff, because those may break with time or whatever. The body is mostly foam, like the character himself there. The rider is all foam, and then most of this underbody is foam, but then this top stuff here is all plastic. So it's a mix of plastic and foam, but it's pretty light for the most part, and it has pretty good pitch and power, so this actually flies quite well, even in a bit of a breeze. I mean, it's going to get pushed around in a wind just because, you know, it's big and has a lot of surface area, but it can fight it, and it's nice and stable and smooth. I think it has a gyro for sure, and I'm pretty sure it has an accelerometer. So it seemed, you know, really stable and would hold its position and self-right and everything. So pretty easy to fly and pretty good out in windy conditions. You know, relatively windy. Obviously, it's not going to take a ton of wind. It does have these big prop guards on them, which you could remove. They're just screwed on, and then they kind of clip around the motor mount here. So it looked like I didn't actually remove mine because it seemed like maybe it would be a little bit tricky to get them back on, and I didn't want to mess with that. And it also doesn't come with any spare props. So if you remove the prop guard, you're going to be more likely to break a prop, and then you're out of luck. They don't, you know, this is just toy grade, so they don't sell spare parts for it. So if and when you break a prop, you're going to be up to your own devices to try to find replacements or something. I don't really know what you would do in that case. So it's probably a good idea to keep your prop guards on to protect the props and to protect yourself if you hit yourself or whatever. It would have been cool if they made this out of clear plastic just so it didn't quite show up as well, and so it looked a little bit more like it was just a speeder bike flying around. But when it's in the air and those props are spinning, you don't really see them that much, and it looks pretty authentic. This thing looks really cool flying through the air, and you know, this is like literally a dream come true for me. I've wanted a quadcopter version of this ever since I've seen the custom builds, but you know, I've wanted to ride a speeder bike ever since I first saw the movie 20 plus years ago. So just so cool to finally have an RC version of this that I can fly around, and definitely one of my favorite models now. Just one of the coolest RCs that I own. Let's see if there's any other notes about it in my notes here. No, that looks like that covers it. So yeah, let's go check it out in flight. Alright, this is the flight review of the Hogs Star Wars speeder bike quadcopter. If you're as big of a fan of Star Wars as I am, I'm sure you are probably just as excited about this model as I am. This thing is so cool, one of the coolest RCs I've ever flown. Not necessarily in performance, but just in, you know, cool factor, nostalgia, and all that kind of stuff. But it does perform pretty well. For what it is, actually, it is quite a decent flying quad. And I got a bit of a breeze today, so it does get pushed around by the wind a bit, but it can actually fight it pretty well. It's got some decent pitch, and it's pretty stable. And I'm over here over the parking lot because this has an altitude hold, but it uses like sonic sensor, ultrasonic sensors, not a barometer. And so that works best over a hard surface. It doesn't work very well over like carpet or grass. It needs a hard surface to reflect off of. So that's why I'm over here, so I can show off that mode. But right now I'm just flying manual, and I mean, you can see the thing just looks so cool flying around. It's just really, really neat looking model. Love this thing. So iconic. Alright, so let's take it down for a landing. And now if I flip the switch down here to this lock position to the right, now it's going to use altitude hold. So I'm going to give throttle, but it's only going to give however much throttle it needs to maintain its height, and then you adjust the height with these arrows. So I'll go ahead and pull the throttle all the way up, and it's going to get its height, and there we go. So now it's just going to hold that height as I fly around. So it kind of stays nice and close to the ground, kind of like a speeder bike would in real, or not real life, but in the movie. But you know, it's not super precise. I mean, as you saw there just a second ago, it kind of bounced off the ground. So it's not a super precise altitude hold, but it works pretty well for the most part. And then the right bumper, they call it the jump button. So if I hit that, jump. Well, it didn't seem to work right there. Let me get it coming back around. It basically just gives it more altitude for a second. Jump. There you go. Kind of hard with the wind pushing around and stuff, but yeah, when you hit the jump button, it just gives it a little more altitude in the altitude hold for a second to make it kind of look like it jumped over something. Not really that functional, just kind of a, you know, probably figured, hey, what can we do to give this a button to make it do something different? So I'm back on manual mode because the wind started to kick up and push it around there. But I mean, as you can see, it has some pretty decent pitch and fight for it. So even though it's kind of a big foam body and all these prop guards and everything that gets pushed around, it does fight the wind pretty well, actually. So pretty good flying model, especially for Air Hogs. One of the better quadcopters I've flown from them. Sometimes it can get tricky, like right there, as I was trying to do a banked turn, and it's like the yaw kind of gives up sometimes and doesn't want to turn. Turn. Not bad though. Ooh, a little drop out there for some reason. Man, it just looks so cool. Let's get it up here against the blue sky. Little wind. It'd be neat if the props were angled forward a little bit so it stayed a little more level in forward flight, but it still looks pretty accurate when it's flying forward. It looks really cool. Yeah, the wind's kicking up pretty good right now, but it's manageable. It takes a lot on my part, but it's doing it. Let's get a little closer here for a nice hover shot in the sunlight. Man, that thing looks so cool. I've wanted a speeder bike since I first saw the movie, so that's a pretty big moment for me to have a speeder bike that I can fly remotely at least. It's as close as I'm ever gonna get. Alright, well, it looks like my battery's dying there. That was full throttle and it wasn't wanting to get any lift, but I think I showed all there was to show, so pretty cool, man. This thing is just truly iconic. Very awesome. I love it. Alright, well, that's the Air Hogs speeder bike from Star Wars. Check the video description for a price and purchase link. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.